Happening today, the Justice Department is set to appear once again before Federal District Judge James Boasberg regarding his order last month to turn around a deportation flight bound for El Salvador. DOJ lawyers set to make their case for why the Trump administration did not violate his order. Zach Schonfeld, courts and legal reporter here at The Hill, joins us now with more. Zach, good to see you again. What are you expecting to hear in court today?
Hey, Drew, this is the opportunity for the Trump administration to lay out to Judge Boasberg why they believe they did not violate his orders that had blocked the Trump administration from invoking the Alien Enemies Act to carry out these swift deportations. This has, of course, been a battle that is now playing out in his courtroom for multiple weeks, and he has set this hearing as he vows to get to the bottom of this. Now, heading into today's hearing, there are two things in particular I'm watching. The first is that the Justice Department has advanced an argument that it was only the judge's written order that is controlling. They say the oral order that he had given from the bench just under an hour earlier at that Saturday, March 15th hearing isn't controlling. So that's something that could come up. And then the second thing is the Justice Department has been resisting turning over additional information on these flights to the judge. They say even turning it over privately would implicate national security concerns. So they're invoking something called the state secrets privilege. So that's another issue that could come up today at what is set to be a major hearing.
And Judge Boasberg, the judge overseeing this case, has received a lot of criticism from both Trump and Republicans in Congress. They are making this case that district judges don't have authority to block a president's actions. Is that an argument they would actually make in court, or is that made for public consumption?
It's not an argument that's the focus of today's hearing, but it is an argument that the administration has been making at the Supreme Court, both in this case and other cases. As all of this is going on in Judge Boasberg's court, the administration has a pending request at the Supreme Court to lift his orders, and the justices could actually now rule at any time. At this point, we're just waiting for that ruling at some point to hit our inboxes. And if you look across all of these emergency applications at the Supreme Court, whether it be this Alien Enemies Act case, whether it be the birthright citizenship case, the probationary employee firings case, the teacher grants case at the Supreme Court, all of these, the administration has been trying to send a message that they believe that district courts are exceeding their authority in implementing these nationwide injunctions. So they're trying to send the message to the Supreme Court that they can either rein in these lower judges' injunctions, or this is a pattern that will probably continue to play out for the next 4 years.
Speaking of the DOJ, new reporting from the Associated Press shows in the final days of the last administration, the department quietly decided not to prosecute Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Paxton was being investigated for using his office to benefit a wealthy donor. What do we know about the decision to drop that case?
Yeah, this investigation had been looming, and it had been a bit of a mystery as to what happened to it. And now, according to this AP report, this is the first time that we have learned that this case has been officially closed. And as you teed up there, not in the Trump administration, but that this was a decision made by the Biden-era Justice Department in its waning weeks. This case is related to that whole battle over Ken Paxton's impeachment that we saw play out, where he got impeached, was suspended from office for a period of time before he was ultimately acquitted. But it now seems that this aspect of his legal battle is coming to a close. Also, one other aspect of his legal troubles that have been coming to a close, there was a separate case that he had actually already been indicted on nearly a decade ago at the state level. Just a few weeks ago, he reached an agreement to avoid trial in that case by agreeing to pay $300,000 in restitution.
Expect to hear a lot more from Paxton and about Paxton, as the word is he's going to be challenging Republican Senator John Cornyn in a blockbuster Senate race next year. Shifting gears, the man accused of attempting to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh announced he intends to plead guilty. That's despite his lawyers arguing earlier that the case should be tossed. Walk us through the details of this case.
Yeah, this is a case that dates back a few years, back to 2022, right around the time just after that draft abortion opinion was leaked. There were all of those protests at the justices' homes. And in the midst of all of that, Nicholas Roski is alleged to have flown from California to the D.C. area and shown up at Justice Kavanaugh's house, outside his house, with a bunch of weapons. He said he later allegedly told police that he had been there intending to kill the conservative justice, both over that forthcoming decision that overturned Roe versus Wade Watergate, also a major gun case that the court had at the time. When this indictment was first brought, there had been a long period of time where Roski's public defenders had been engaged with the Justice Department in plea negotiations. And it appeared months ago that those had been unsuccessful. The judge actually had set a trial date for this June and started moving the case along. So this is now a sudden shift where we got this new letter from Roski's attorneys saying that he intends to plead guilty. This also comes just a few days before the judge was set to hold a hearing on his pretrial motions in the case. So the timing here is certainly interesting.
And Zach, before we let you go, your newsletter this week, The Gavel, you highlighted this lawyer, Paul Clement. He's a heavyweight conservative lawyer. He's now taking on the Trump administration. Who exactly is he, and why is this such a big deal?
Yeah, when you hire Paul Clement to be your lawyer, it's like bringing in the big guns. He has argued more than 100 cases in front of the Supreme Court. He's a former Solicitor General and has been the lawyer behind some of the biggest conservative victories at the High Court in recent years. Expansion of Second Amendment rights, the case that said federal courts can't review partisan gerrymandering claims, the case this past term that overturned the Chevron doctrine, and so many others. And it is also notable that he has made the decision here to represent WilmerHale in its fight against Donald Trump, because Paul Clement himself has a history with big law. Twice, he resigned from big law firms over their decision-making. He first resigned from a firm called King and Spalding when it had withdrawn from representing the House in defending the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA. And then years later, Paul Clement resigned from another firm, Kirkland and Ellis, when it had made the decision to stop taking on Second Amendment cases. So despite that history and his well-known criticism of some of big law's decision-making, it's quite striking here that he's now coming to their defense in this high-profile lawsuit.
All right, always lots to follow in the courts. Everyone out there, be sure to read The Gavel every week. The new edition comes out on Wednesdays. Zach Schonfeld, as always, thanks for your insight.
Although I am still a Democrat, I am announcing that I will forego the Democratic primary for mayor and appeal directly to all New Yorkers as an independent candidate in the general election.
You heard it right there. Mayor Eric Adams of New York says he's dropping the Democrat label to run as an independent in the upcoming New York City mayoral race. Mayor Adams' announcement caps off weeks of speculation that he would run as an independent. The embattled mayor has been facing sagging poll numbers amid legal battles and says the Democratic Party left him behind during his legal troubles. The announcement comes one day after a federal judge formally dismissed the corruption case against Adams. The case alleged the mayor accepted bribes from a wealthy foreign business people and a Turkish government official in exchange for favors. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo currently leads the race, polling at 39% according to the latest numbers. The House is out of session for the rest of the week after several Republicans broke with their party to force a vote on a new rule regarding members of Congress who are new parents. That change would allow parents to vote by proxy without having to physically be in Washington. Republican leadership opposed that rule, with Speaker Johnson calling proxy voting unconstitutional. But Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, a new mother herself, defied leadership and led the group of 8 other Republican defectors to join Democrats to advance the change. For a play-by-play of this inside baseball, we're bringing in national political reporter and author of the amazing 1230 Report, Cate Martel. So, you've been covering this back and forth all week among Anna Paulina Luna, Speaker Johnson. Walk us through exactly what happened.
Yeah, well, Drew, what happens in the House is always wild. It never proves to be boring. Basically, as you mentioned, Congressman Luna wants to force a vote, basically to allow these new members, new parents members, to vote remotely, to have somebody vote by proxy. And Speaker Mike Johnson argues it's unconstitutional. They basically argue that this is a slippery slope for other people to then vote remotely. So Republicans want to block it, and Luna, joined by 8 other Republicans, are very much on board with this. So they banded together with Democrats. They reached the 218 vote threshold. They have enough to have a discharge petition so that they can force a vote. So they must consider it. Meanwhile, Speaker Mike Johnson does not want that to happen. So he is doing everything he can behind the scenes to block it. Now, because of some arcane congressional procedure that I will spare you the details of, now the House is frozen. Now there's nothing that that can happen because they have the 218 votes. So either they vote on it and they force it along, or it continues being in limbo. So that's why Speaker Mike Johnson said, hey, we're going to stop business on Tuesday this week. We'll reconvene next week. And behind the scenes, he's trying to figure out how to find a compromise with Congressman Luna.
Any idea of what's going to happen?
So as far as the compromise goes, they might have a nursing room near the House floor, or they might allow Congress members to use their official bank accounts to be able to pay to go back and forth. That's some of the compromises that could happen. It's unclear whether Congressman Luna would actually go for that and whether she would free up this stalled House. So those are a few of the proposals that Johnson actually told my colleagues at the Hill. But if she doesn't agree to that, it's back to the drawing board, because Speaker Mike Johnson is between a rock and a hard place, and he doesn't really have many options until she agrees to it.
Big picture here, Johnson has surprised a lot of people in Washington with his ability to keep his conference in line. There are some big issues, though, on the horizon: debt ceiling, taxes, entitlement spending. This proxy voting fiasco, is that a bad sign for Johnson moving forward?
It's sure not a good sign, right, Drew? Because, as we famously know, that House Republicans have such a slim margin. They really don't have many votes to work with. If they just have just a handful of defectors, then they can't move any legislation through. So he really needs this united, tight caucus. So far, we haven't really seen that. We saw Congressman Luna and 8 other Republicans band together with Democrats. So if there are other bipartisan measures where you just have just a handful of Republicans that want to join with Democrats, they can hold everything up. And we are at a time when we've already seen President Trump's legislative agenda is already stalled. And, I'm sure there's a lot of pressure for Johnson to continue to move it forward and to stop those pauses. And if he has a hard time corralling his caucus for something that is so, low priority for the Trump administration, then how are they going to pass along this major legislative agenda like you mentioned?
Senator Cory Booker made history this week with that marathon speech on the Senate floor. Big part of that speech dedicated to railing against Elon Musk. While that was happening, Democrats made gains in red districts in Florida. Musk, part of the attention that the Democrats running in those races were focused on. And then the same thing in Wisconsin, where Musk was a major focus of the Democrat-aligned candidate in that race. You think Democrats have found their boogeyman?
I do. I think that Democrats have had the best week that they've had since November. And up until now, Drew, it seems like Democrats have had a really hard time finding their footing. They have been not united in figuring out what happened and what went wrong in November and how can they pick up the pieces and move forward. That's why Senator Cory Booker's speech this week got so much attention. It was the fire in the belly that I think Democrats have been missing so far when they've been trying to figure out what went wrong and what can they change about their messaging. Senator Cory Booker, by speaking on the House floor for 25 hours and breaking the record, talking about the Trump administration's policies in a really graspable way, had so much attention on social media. It got more than 350 million likes on the live on TikTok. It shows that it really did break through, that the Trump administration's policies, some may argue they're controversial, but more than half of Americans voted for him. More than half of people did not necessarily vote for some of the people that are part of the administration, Elon Musk most notably. And that's why I think we're seeing some of this pushback, and he is becoming this boogeyman.
That brings me to my next question. Are Musk's days in Washington numbered?
It's starting to appear that yes, it has always been the plan for Musk to start out at the administration and then eventually return to his businesses. But we're now seeing new reporting that he might be leaving sooner than we thought. Now, there's an interesting quote from the New York Times' Maggie Haberman saying that within the Trump administration, Trump's advisors and staff are getting really tired, in her words, of Trump being around. That he is
of Musk being around,
because he's not who was elected into office. He has a lot of influence and is doing a lot of controversial changes. And it's been a hard dynamic happening within the cabinet and the Trump administration, that it seems like some people within the Trump's orbit want him gone, and it sounds like he might be leaving in the coming weeks and heading back to his businesses. But to be clear, President Trump is very happy with the work that he's done so far.
Making a point to say that Trump still likes him. His money could be very useful for Republicans in the midterm elections as well. We'll leave it at that. Cate Martel, thanks so much.
Thanks, Drew.
Deadly storms tearing through the South and Midwest, spawning tornadoes across 7 states. The storms leaving a path of destruction behind, knocking down trees and power lines and leaving homes in pieces. And it's not done yet, with the threat of deadly flash flooding continuing through the weekend. News Nation's Alex Capriello joins us now from Indiana with the latest.
An absolute miracle just about 15 miles northwest of Indianapolis. Look at the damage that this severe storm actually created on this warehouse. You can see just how big this wall is that came tumbling down from these powerful gusts and most likely tornadic activity. One woman was even trapped within the rubble. She had to be saved from first responders and firefighters who arrived on the scene quickly and pulled her out. Take a look at this drone video that we shot, and you can really see the extent of the damage, that twisted and mangled metal that's hanging from the rooftops. This whole warehouse had to be evacuated quickly. Luckily, only 6 people were inside at the time that it came crashing down. And again, that one woman pulled from the wreckage and hospitalized, but said to be in good condition. Overall, we are looking at this deadly tornado outbreak across the entire United States, which is now being blamed for at least 2 deaths in Tennessee and 1 in Missouri. This was the scene here in Indiana where 1 person was hospitalized when a tornado barreled through this warehouse. At least 3 people were inside, with fire departments from all over helping search through the rubble. And tornadoes tore through southeast Missouri, killing at least 1 person there. The destruction was widespread. Here you can see the aftermath just outside of Columbia, where heavy winds ripped the roofs off of buildings and toppled trees and power lines. Hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses waking up without power this morning. Take a look at some of the tornadoes that also touched down in Arkansas on Wednesday. State officials said at least 4 people were hurt, and damage was reported across 22 counties from these storms, which also brought hail, severe wind, and flash flooding. So much destruction from this round of severe weather storms across the Midwest and the South, including parts of Mississippi, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. And the threat is not quite over. Much of the country still on guard for possible flash flooding in the coming days. For News Nation, I'm Alex Capriello.
News Nation's Alex Capriello, thank you. And that's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Drew Petrimoulx. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hill's YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.